Ice Cube, a massive rapper from the 80s, a pioneer of rap music, is exposing both dirty Hollywood, the Epstein files, and sharing with us names that you may not have seen before, and telling us the reason why he never got involved with all of that mishmash. Mishmash, where did I even come up with that word? Thank you guys for subscribing to the channel. I'm starting my day off with a coffee. Let me know what you're drinking. Now, let's dive into the story.
That I'm not part of the club. And a lot of you listening to me right here, right now, you're not part of the club either.
That voice you just heard, that's Ice Cube, one of the most fearless men in the history of entertainment. And that single sentence, it cost him more than you know.
Now, Oprah is limited in the context of the files, but there is clear collusion between Oprah and Jeffrey Epstein.
Oprah, Epstein, collusion. Three words nobody in mainstream media wants you to say in the same sentence.
But it's one that we all knew should be said in the same sentence. By the way, some of these AI narrations are awful. I apologize ahead of time, but the details that we're going to see inside of here are worth going through and discussing.
I've been excluded on Oprah, you know.
On Oprah?
On Oprah, yeah.
Excluded over and over. Why? Why would Oprah, the woman who built her entire brand on uplifting black voices, shut Ice Cube out? What did he know? What was he saying that they didn't want on camera? Because here's what nobody is connecting Ice Cube's warnings about Hollywood's gatekeepers. The Epstein files naming Oprah, the missing girls at her school in South Africa, the friendships with Harvey Weinstein and Diddy. This isn't a collection of rumors.
Yeah, all of those things we've actually spoken about in a separate video focused on Oprah Winfrey herself, but she definitely surrounded herself with people that got caught up in some serious wrongdoing. I mean, look at the screen right there. Diddy and Weinstein, two of the worst in the industry as of right now, from what we know.
Before we get into the deep end, you need to understand who Ice Cube actually is.
Now, I know my audience here in the channel. I know I have an older audience, which I love. How many of you are familiar with Ice Cube? How many of you know his music or even listened to his music back in the 80s? Or are you someone that really couldn't stand his music? Maybe don't even like rap music at all. Just curious about who's actually watching the video.
Because this story only makes sense when you understand the weight of the man telling it. O'Shea Jackson grew up in South Central Los Angeles at a time when that zip code was basically a war zone. He came up through the streets, channeled everything he saw and lived into lyrics. And by the time he was a teenager, he was rewriting the rules of American music. NWA didn't just change rap, they terrified a government. The FBI literally sent a letter to their label warning about the content of their music. Think about that. The Federal Bureau of Investigation was scared of a group of kids from Compton. And then Cube pivoted. Movies, produced films, built businesses, launched the Big Three basketball league, giving aging NBA players a real stage.
I'll tell you what, he actually did a lot with his spotlight. Most artists, they just do their music and then kind of fall off or don't ever have any success after that. But he continued to do more and more and build off of his success, which is a characteristic of a successful business person and someone that's quite smart.
The man has built empire after empire, completely independent of the traditional Hollywood machine. That independence, that is exactly why he became a target. Because in Hollywood, independence isn't celebrated, it's punished. You can be successful on their terms, or you can be an outsider. There's no in between. And Ice Cube made his choice a long time ago.
I'm not part of the herd. I'm not part of the go along to get along gang, so to speak. So, you know, I'm an outsider.
So he's basically saying that he beats to his own drum. He does what he needs to do along his terms to see his success, and he doesn't follow the crowd. And we can anticipate that he's talking about, or we could assume that he's talking about doing all of the things that are done in evil Hollywood. Now, let's just assume right now he was never part of any of that stuff.
The outsider, that's the label they gave him. But when you look at what he was being excluded from, you start to wonder if outsider isn't actually the safest place to be. He tried. The View turned away. He tried Oprah's platform, locked out. Every time he got close to the mainstream media machine, the door shut in his face. And nobody could ever give him a straight answer why.
You know, I tried to go on The View. They didn't have me on The View.
Why?
Well, a few of the guests just really didn't like where I was coming from. So, or a few of the hosts, I mean. So that's what I was told by the producers.
Think about that. He produced a film Barbershop, one of the most beloved black ensemble films of the 2000s. The entire cast went on Oprah. Ice Cube, the producer, the creative force behind the project, not invited. He made a groundbreaking show called Black. White, the cast went on. Ice Cube, not invited. This keeps happening too many times for it to be coincidence.
So that's actually strange. So he produces the movie. The actors from the movie get to go on the shows, but the producer, who's actually a huge name himself, doesn't get to go on to these talk shows. Clearly, there's something that he wants to say that they don't want said on their platform.
When the same door keeps closing on the same person, you have to ask who's holding the handle from the other side. Ice Cube has a name for them. He calls them the gatekeepers.
I'm talking about the club of gatekeepers that we all got to deal with. You know who they are, and they definitely know who they are.
The club. He doesn't name every name. He doesn't have to, because anyone who has ever tried to exist in the entertainment industry outside the system they've built, they already know exactly who he's talking about. These are the people who decide who gets a platform and who gets buried, who gets promoted and who gets labeled difficult, who gets a second chance and whose career quietly disappears after they say the wrong thing. And here's what makes Ice Cube's warning so significant. He's not some conspiracy theorist on the internet. He's a man who has been inside those rooms. He's sat at those tables. He has seen the machinery from the inside, and he chose to walk away from it. That choice alone tells you more than any expose ever could.
Now, since he's refusing to be a part of any of these talk show platforms, because maybe they don't want his opinions being shared there, does that tell us that the people that are the hosts on those platforms are involved in the criminal activities that they don't want spoken of on their show? Or does it have nothing to do with the actual hosts? And is it production that's refusing him from going on the show and they're just blaming it on the hosts? Maybe we'll find out.
What makes them so mad is when you don't want to be a part of their fucking club. That pisses them off.
Let that sink in. It's not that you attacked them. It's not that you went to the press or filed a lawsuit. Just refusing to participate, just saying, no, I don't want in that alone, is enough to make them furious. Why would a refusal make powerful people angry? Think about that. If the club was just about networking and opportunity, a refusal would mean nothing. You just lose access. But if membership comes with conditions, with expectations, with loyalty requirements, with things you're required to look away from, then a refusal is a threat, because someone who refuses the deal also refuses the silence. Now here's where the Epstein files enter the frame. Jeffrey Epstein operated not as a lone predator, but as a hub, a node in a network,
right.
A man who collected powerful people the same way other people collect art.
Now you have to think, Ice Cube, why does he want Ice Cube? He's a massive rapper who represents a huge community in the western side of the United States. Was this Epstein's effort to bring in a representative from that community to try and get hold of that whole side of the United States or that whole culture from the United States? Or was it just he wanted Ice Cube because he was a cool rapper producer and he thought that maybe there was some dirt he can get on him? We don't know.
And the mechanism he used to do it was extraordinarily simple. He made you feel like being connected to him was a privilege. Being in his circles meant you were powerful. Being in his files meant you mattered.
So like if you were on the scene and you were powerful, like to be honest, like if you're not in those files, it would be an insult because it just means that you were a bit of a loser.
Wow. So what she's saying is being in the Epstein files means that you were important enough of a person to be in the Epstein files. And if you weren't in the files, you're basically a nobody. Really, the reason for that is because Jeffrey Epstein wanted all of the most powerful people to be within the files so that he can get and blackmail all of those people.
A loser. If you weren't in Epstein's files, you were a loser. That is the mentality of the world these people operated in. And now ask yourself, is that so different from what Ice Cube is describing? A club so exclusive that not being invited is the punishment. A world where access to the right rooms, the right people, the right events defines your entire worth. The gatekeepers in and Epstein's network aren't two separate stories. They're describing the same architecture of power just from different angles. Now let's talk about the name that keeps appearing at the intersection of all of this: Oprah Winfrey. And before anyone jumps to conclusions, we are not here to convict anyone. We are here to follow documented connections, public statements, and a pattern that has become impossible to ignore. Because when the same name shows up across multiple different scandals involving multiple different predators across multiple different decades at some point, the word coincidence stops being available. Let's start with what we know as documented fact. The Department of Justice released more than 3,000 documents surrounding Jeffrey Epstein. And in those documents, Oprah Winfrey's name appears multiple times. Contact lists, correspondence. Her name isn't buried, it appears across multiple categories of documents. Now, being in a contact list doesn't make anyone guilty of anything. We have to be clear about that. But it does mean there was a relationship, a documented relationship, between Oprah Winfrey and Jeffrey Epstein. But here's where it gets specific. Here's where it stops being a name on a list and becomes something much harder to wave away. Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York. She is connected to both Epstein and to Oprah's show. And there is an actual email in the documents that lays out the coordination between all three of them.
Sarah sent Epstein an email saying, I want to make sure you're aware I'm going on Oprah tomorrow, and she is going to ask me about my debts, the entrapment of last year, and the press about you in January. It'll be quick and at the top of the show, all of 10 seconds. A very small piece. However, I just wanted to make sure that you are aware of this and seek your advice on how you want me to answer.
Read that again. Sarah Ferguson is going on Oprah's show. And before she goes on, she emails Jeffrey Epstein, asking him how he wants her to answer questions about him on Oprah's platform. And Epstein responded. He drafted the answer she should give. He coached her on how to handle the Oprah interview. Then she went on and delivered it.
This is straight up collusion. This is Oprah passing through a message to Epstein.
I guess the question is, Oprah giving the questions to her guest prior to the show, allowing her time to coordinate the answer with Epstein, was that Oprah's attempt to make sure that the answer was all kosher and okay? Or does she do that for all of her guests all of the time, and it's just part of the strategy that they have and the production that they run on their show?
What we do know is that her platform was actively used as part of a strategy to rehabilitate Jeffrey Epstein's image. Whether she was complicit or simply used, we can't say with certainty, but the platform was used, and the question of whether she knew sits unanswered. Here's why that matters. Because at the same time all of this was happening, Oprah had another scandal swirling around her name, a scandal involving young girls that almost nobody was talking about.
I think we're talking about her school right now. Let's see.
In 2007, Oprah Winfrey launched one of the most celebrated philanthropic projects of her career, the Oprah Winfrey Leadership Academy for Girls in South Africa. It was supposed to be a beacon, a $40 million investment in the futures of underprivileged young women, a legacy project, something the world could point to and say this is what real impact looks like.
You have to sometimes wonder, and I'm going to talk about this for a second. We hear this about a lot of these philanthropists. They open up these charities and these things that are just great for young people, underprivileged people, people in poverty, people that are sick. I'd like to believe that there is some goodness within that. So, for example, right here, that Oprah had some goodness in trying to open up this school for underprivileged girls in Africa. And that it wasn't just completely a facade to try and get young girls put into the system, the Epstein system, or the dark Hollywood system, or a way to just feed these machines with young girls. Because if there's some goodness behind it, at least it initially came from a good place. But if the entire time this whole charity was created, one, for tax purposes, or two, to actually feed evil, that makes it even worse because there's zero goodness behind it. But even with the goodness behind it, it's terrible what happened.
Within months of opening, the school was enveloped in scandal. A dormitory matron was accused of physically assaulting students. More than 15 girls came forward with complaints of mistreatment. 6 students aged 13 to 15 were allegedly targeted in a systematic pattern of abuse. The matron was charged with 14 counts, including indecent assault and criminal injury. Oprah responded publicly. She said she was devastated. She encouraged any girls who had been harmed to come forward. She positioned herself as the one demanding accountability.
And I spoke to all the girls personally, and I encouraged all of them, any of them who had actually been harmed, to please come forward.
And then the employee was cleared. After Oprah's own investigation, the matron who was charged walked free. Critics allege that Oprah's investigation was designed not to find the truth, but to protect the institution. A former headmistress actually sued Oprah for defamation, claiming Winfrey's public comments implied the headmistress knew about the and covered it up. But there's an even darker layer to this story, one that the mainstream coverage almost completely ignored. Reports began circulating, including from voices who had followed the school since its opening, about girls who had gone missing from among the graduating classes. Multiple girls, no comprehensive coverage, no follow-up investigations broadcast at scale. The story was raised, it created a brief ripple, and then it was gone.
All of the girls went missing that was at that school graduating class, and nobody is talking about it? I tell you why. Because you guys are protected, and I don't appreciate it. I want you guys tap in, tune in, comment. If you guys know about it, talk about it, spread the word, share this. Those girls in Africa went missing. That was at Oprah's school, Oprah Winfrey. Where were these girls at? Has anybody found them? Why is there not enough coverage on this?
I love that this is being spoken of, but that one just made me giggle just based off of that influencer there. Sorry.
That question hangs in the air, and nobody with a major platform has answered it. Now layer this against what the Epstein files reveal about how predatory networks actually operate the infrastructure of elite access, the use of humanitarian organizations as cover, the pattern of vulnerable children in elite-adjacent institutions, and the picture starts to form on its own. We're not drawing a direct line and saying we know what happened. What we are saying is that the silence around this story is deafening. And in a world where Oprah's name appears in Epstein's documents, where her school became the site of documented abuse, where multiple girls reportedly went missing, that silence demands explanation. Here's the part of the story that stops being about coincidences and starts looking like a pattern. Harvey Weinstein, for decades the most powerful producer in Hollywood. Celebrated, awarded, adored, the kind of man who could make or break careers with a phone call. Oprah Winfrey was photographed embracing him, smiling alongside him, at events where his name on the marquee guaranteed the room would be filled with the most powerful people in the world. And then the walls came down. Dozens of women came forward. The story that everyone in Hollywood had apparently known about for years, the assaults, the predatory behavior, finally broke into the open.
Yeah, essentially, if you wanted to be successful, you would do what Harvey Weinstein would want you to do, and you would see success. And the crazy thing was, he was actually capable of delivering. That's why it was so powerful. He would take advantage of these young actresses, potentially actors as well, and he would then deliver what he said he was going to. If you do these terrible things to me or with me, you will get a role in this movie. And that happened. So because of the power he had, a lot of people dealt with this abuse so that they could see the success.
Suddenly, everybody who had been standing next to Harvey had somewhere else to be. Oprah publicly supported the Me Too movement in the aftermath. She made speeches. She was embraced as a champion of survivors, but singer Seal wasn't buying it. You had heard the rumors, but you had no idea. That was Seal's caption. My bad. Here's the thing about that post. It wasn't some random internet troll. It was a man who had been on her show, who had sat across from her, who had been inside that world. And he was saying clearly and publicly that the people celebrating Oprah as a savior were being played. Then there's Diddy, now facing serious federal allegations involving trafficking and abuse. Oprah had a documented, public-facing, friendly relationship with Sean Combs. She was photographed with him. She appeared at his events. She was part of the same circles. And R. Kelly, the case that took 2 decades of survivor testimony to finally crack open. Oprah had an interview with 2 of his accusers. She had the story. She had the platform. And then, for reasons nobody has ever fully explained, the interview never aired. The footage sat on a hard drive somewhere, while R. Kelly continued operating. Weinstein, Kelly, Combs, Epstein through the Sarah Ferguson connection. That's not a coincidence. That's not bad luck in choosing friends. That is a pattern that needs to be examined. And it's the same pattern that Ice Cube was pointing at when he talked about the gatekeepers, the people who decide who gets protected and whose story never gets told. And while all of this was happening behind the gilded curtain, real people were having their careers destroyed. Real artists, real women, real black voices that the industry claimed to celebrate. Monique won an Academy Award. Let that sit there for a second. She won an Oscar for Precious, one of the most raw, powerful, painful performances of the 2000s. That should have been a launching pad. Instead, it became the moment her career was quietly put on ice. She says she was blackballed, and she names names.
I got labeled as difficult because I said one word, and that was no. Now, I said no to some very powerful people. What Tyler Perry showed me, Lee Daniels, Oprah Winfrey, and Lionsgate. When you don't do what we ask you to do, we'll take your livelihood.
Wow. Okay. She legit said it right there. That was powerful right there. She said no. Her career was gone.
When you don't do what we ask you to do, we'll take your livelihood. Not we'll be disappointed. Not we'll move on. We will take your livelihood.
Wow.
That is not the language of a disappointed collaborator. That is the language of a threat. And Monique says it came from Oprah Winfrey. But it didn't stop at professional blackballing. Monique's complaint against Oprah is deeply personal. She shared intimate details of her life with Winfrey, her estrangement from her mother, her pain, her wounds. And she says Winfrey used that vulnerability against her.
She never said my mother was coming on that show. Because had Oprah Winfrey said, I'm gonna have your mother, I would have said, shut it down. I don't need the world seeing how greedy my mother is.
Monique, Oprah put her mother on the show. She shared something private, something painful, something she trusted to a woman she respected, and that trust was used as content. And then there's the Color Purple Oprah's most recent major project. Taraji P. Henson came forward and talked about the pay disparity. Black actresses on a film that Oprah co-produced, being paid significantly less than their white counterparts in comparable roles, being asked to drive themselves to set, being treated as less than.
And so whenever I heard there was an issue or there was a problem with the cars or there was a problem with the food, I would step in and do whatever I could to make it right.
But here's what's interesting about that response. She acknowledged there were problems. She acknowledged having to step in, which means the problems existed. And the star of the film was out there publicly discussing pay inequity on a film produced by the woman who has spent 30 years positioning herself as the champion of black women. Monique had a name for the role Oprah was playing.
You called her the help.
Yes.
And so I can see how that could be a little contradictory in saying, I love my sister, she's been dope, but she's been the help for all these years.
Yes.
The help. In Hollywood's power structure, someone who facilitates the needs of those above them while maintaining the appearance of leadership. It's one of the most cutting descriptions in this entire story because it reframes everything. It means Oprah may not be at the top of the system, she may be the most visible face of it, the one who makes the machine palatable, the one who gives it a human face.
I mean, she's essentially a pawn in the system as well. Although her money and her success, she is someone that's being utilized to bring new people in to the system. Everyone trusts Oprah, or I should say everyone trusted Oprah. So you would then, with that trust, go to the parties, go to the events, and be next to her, being introduced to all of these absolutely terrible people being brought into the machine, being brought into the system.
Because to understand why Oprah's connection to this network matters, you have to understand what Epstein was actually doing, not the surface level narrative, the real agenda underneath it. Epstein wasn't just a predator with wealthy friends. According to testimony from his own victims, he was running something far more calculated, something that sounds like science fiction but is documented in federal filings. This isn't tabloid speculation. This is from victim testimony in federal proceedings. Jeffrey Epstein was obsessed with eugenics, with engineering a genetic lineage, with creating what he called designer babies. And he wasn't keeping this secret. He was hosting dinners and conferences with scientists, researchers, and Silicon Valley billionaires about it.
Your favorite artist has been practicing rituals in a satanic cult where they take babies from other countries and mutilate and kill them as a form of blood sacrifice to their god.
Now you can dismiss Nicki Minaj's tweet if you want to, but she was inside those circles. She had access to information that the rest of us don't. And what she described, the rituals, the babies, the blood maps, onto what victim testimony in the Epstein case has also described. This is the world that the gatekeepers protect. Well, this is what's behind the curtain that Ice Cube says he won't join. Not just industry politics and blackballing and unfair treatment, though those things are real and documented. Something darker, something that the most powerful people in the world have worked very hard to keep buried. And Epstein was about to talk, right before his death, which was officially ruled a suicide, but which virtually nobody believes he was in negotiations with federal prosecutors about cooperation, about naming names.
According to an FBI record, Epstein was possibly about to cooperate with the feds right before he died. That on July 29, 2019, his lawyers and the federal prosecutors in this case, in very general terms, discussed the possibility of a resolution of the case and the possibility of the defendant's cooperation. Cooperation's key.
What they're implying here is that he was about to cooperate, so he was removed from the situation so that that cooperation couldn't take place.
He was about to name everyone, and then he was gone. Cameras malfunctioned. Guards fell asleep. A man in federal protective custody with the most sensitive information in the world, dead before he could speak. Ice Cube isn't the only one who saw it. He's just the one who kept talking after everyone told him to stop. Dave Chappelle walked away from a $50 million deal at the height of his fame. At the time, the media coverage was almost comical. They said he had a breakdown. They said he cracked under pressure. They laughed at him. Oprah reportedly mocked him. And
that's always what they say, right? When someone goes against the system, they've gone crazy. How many people in Hollywood have you heard have gone crazy? Gotta wonder if they actually did.
For years, the narrative stuck that Dave Chappelle was unstable. But Dave Chappelle told us exactly what happened in his own words.
I feel like in a lot of instances, I was deliberately being put through stress.
And they do what's called a salt trap. I didn't know this. Apparently baboons love salt.
Okay.
So they put a lump of salt in a hole and they wait for the baboon. The baboon comes, sticks his hand in the hole, grabs the salt makes his hand bigger, and he's trapped. He can't get his hand out. Now, if he's smart, all he does is let go of the salt. Baboon doesn't want to let go of the salt. Then the bushman just comes, takes the baboon, throws him in the cage, and gives him all the salt he wants. And then the baboon gets thirsty. The bushman lets him out of the cage. The first place the baboon runs to is water. Bushman follows him, and they both drink to their fill. And in that analogy, I felt like the baboon.
The salt trap. That's what the $50 million was. That's what every massive deal in Hollywood is for the right kind of person. It looks like opportunity. It looks like reward, but it comes with invisible terms. Stay silent, stay obedient, look away from what we need you to look away from. And if you grab the money, you grab the trap with it.
That's a good analogy, actually, that whole salt trap. I like that breakdown.
Chappelle let go. Cube refused to reach in, and both of them paid a price for it. Both of them got labeled. Both of them got mocked. Both of them found the doors closing around them.
What am I gonna do to deal with these gatekeepers? Well, what I'm gonna do is go on the Gatekeepers podcast tour. And I'm gonna go talk to everybody, and get a chance to get my message out to the people. Be able to let people hear from me, and you might agree, you might not, but the important thing is, for me to go on these platforms, say what I feel about what I think. And, some people may get pissed off because I'm going to talk to everybody.
He's going on a podcast tour to tell everybody everything. Maybe it's time we start a podcast here on the Echo TV channel. Would you guys watch a podcast?
Not playing.
He's not done. Ice Cube is not sitting down. He's not going quiet. He is deliberately and systematically going around every gatekeeper that tried to shut him out. Every platform that said no, he's finding another door, and he's walking through it. And in those files, Oprah Winfrey's name appears in contact lists, in correspondence, in a documented coordination with a convicted predator around what to say on her own platform. Her school in South Africa was the site of documented abuse. Girls reportedly went missing, and a coordinated effort appears to have been made to minimize and bury those stories. But the documents don't lie. The testimonies are on record, and the pattern, the unmistakable, undeniable pattern, is right there for anyone willing to look at it. Ice Cube saw it. Dave Chappelle saw it. Monique saw it and paid for seeing it. The question now is whether enough of us are willing to see it too. Because if Epstein was about to name everyone, and if what he knew could bring down presidents, royalty, and tech billionaires, then the question isn't whether powerful people had a reason to silence him. The question is, how many of those people are still walking free?
And as we know now, almost everyone is still walking free because everyone is in bed with the system. Not everyone, but a lot of people. Enough people to keep those criminals out of jail and out of the court system. This is my first time seeing this whole Ice Cube interaction with how he feels about the industry. And I'm happy to see that another person that's high up in society is against what's going on and speaking up. He'd be welcome on my podcast any day. Now, if you want to learn more about Dirty Hollywood or the Epstein files, I have a video right here for you to check out. Make sure you go there, and I'll see you while you're watching.